I developed at a very early age a disliking of working on cars. So I go to the mechanic, and I have a couple of good ones around here that I take my car to. So no experience with cars intentionally. Anyway, back over to WA3VJB, Paul, and I don't know, I talked to George real quick too right after you had signed out earlier, Paul, and so he may be kind of in the background here too, so we're going to have to listen for a small signal, but he's a good guy, and he gets in with us. So VJB Paul, good morning, and good morning KC2CKO, but back to Paul VJB, it's K2XAM in the group.
And W2GOR saying quick.
GOR, good morning.
W2GOR in the group WA3VJB Annapolis. Well, that's okay to be car adverse. I mean, today's cars are not really serviceable without a reader that goes into the port, the OCM, yeah, OCD, one of those connections, and can tell you all the diagnostic parameters that are going on. I can't stand it. I mean, I can use an open-end wrench on the Datsun spark plugs, for example, and you heard me and Paul talking about mechanical distributors instead of electronic, and I don't have a dashboard screen that tells me, you know, when my car has gotten cold and all that kind of stuff. So I'm very retro that way when it comes to my vehicles. Although I've got a 2014 out there that's got some of that stuff, and I already am kind of adverse to it like you. It's like I don't like the lack of reliability of those things, those sensors that can fail and immobilize the vehicle. I don't like not being able to get to stuff without dismantling most of the vehicle. And it's like, but you know, what can you do? The 2014 was the last year without a dashboard television in it. It's a Chevy Tahoe. And I bought it primarily to tow the boat with. You know, it's not a cruiser that's all gussied up like an Uber or Lyft limo pickup. And it's just a basic bare bones truck / SUV that has good towing capacity. So that's where I'm at on that. And very good on the upcoming tours there with your MG convertible, Paul. I wanted to mention the Fort Ticonderoga and the Lake George cruise. That sounds like a lot of fun. That's why you have a convertible. There are people in the Datsun group where I hang out who have hard tops in the summer. And it's like, why? You know, why don't you just go buy a 510 or a 240Z or something if you want that experience? It's supposed to be open air. But, you know, they're undeterred. It's like, oh, well, then I can drive it in the winter. It's like, yeah, with the salt on the road? I don't think so. How are you, Gordon? Sounded good in here this morning. W2GOR and the group WA3VJB.
All right, Paul. Good to everybody in there. And just a quick good morning. I haven't slept yet, so I'm really tired. I had some health stuff all night, so couldn't head to the doctor in a little while, but need to stay vertical. So been sitting here all night. But anyway, I figured I'd come on here, and I took my my Optimod and my Innovonics out of line. I'm just using a microphone with a simple little compressor. So people are saying they like it. It's more natural. I don't know. So we're just still playing with audio a little bit. And hi to Kevin and a few other people I heard in there. Anyway, I won't keep let me let you pass it around. I know there was a station you were listening for. Also trying a different mic today, trying a condenser mic, which is a little bit softer than the dynamic that I was using. So that's the audio deal here. So I'm not sure who gets it. Paul, over to you. You sound great. 30 over, 40 over here. Band conditions have been great the last few days. So I might just pass out and fall asleep, but I'm going to listen to you guys, and please keep it as boring as possible so I can fall asleep. W2GOR.
Well, there's two Pauls in here. I'll take it for a second. KC2CKO is also in here. Yeah, well, the condenser's doing a good job. It's got a very big low end in the thing, but I'm using headphones that can take advantage of that, so I'm among the listeners who would actually appreciate that. And it sounds clean, of course, you know. So, yeah. Kevin was up at 3 a.m. this morning trying to, it sounded like he's got a Collins audio leveler in there. Or Medtronics, whatever the Descendant was. So I'm going to pass it over to Kev and see how he's copying everybody. Hasn't had it in a while. He just came in from the lawn sprinklers. It's hard to say. K2XAM and the group WA3VJB. Go ahead, Kevin.
I think I just heard George in there, too, for a second. George, good morning to you. If that's you, I'm not sure band conditions are as good as they were yesterday. Anyways, so yes, well, I'm back to the solid state non-feedback version. I thought with the right number of clip leads, I had eliminated the feedback at about 3 o'clock this morning. So what I got here is a mic preamp. I think it's a 356 something, 356A. I'd have to go look at another one that's kind of in the pile across the room here. That I had stuck a couple of new coupling capacitors in and a good pair of 5879 tubes. So this is out of one of the big 212 series consoles. And I've been wanting to get this thing pressed into service as a mic preamp, well, for a long time, at least all summer. And finally sort of got around to getting motivated enough around 8:30 last evening of hooking it up and everything, and went on and made a quick test transmission right here. Nobody was on, and heard the squealing feedback, and I'm like, oh, I just don't have enough ambition last night at 8:30 to go through and try to figure out what was going on. So I was up at 3 doing my food prep and so forth. I sleep in kind of shifts, for those that don't know. I mean, I sleep when I can sleep, usually in the evening. So the first sleep usually happens somewhere between about 5 and, 7 or 8 o'clock, where I just fall asleep on the couch watching TV, and then usually somewhere between 9 and 10 o'clock, I end up getting up off the couch from watching TV, and I just go to bed, and I usually sleep really well, usually until 2 or 3, something like that. So I was up, got my food prep done, and I'm like, do I want to screw with this or not? Yeah, okay, all right, I'll get a couple clip leads out. And so I thought I had the appropriate number of clip leads, but the Metron, or it's really the Metron version of the Collins 26J1 auto level, it's called. And Gordon may be familiar with that, being that you've probably been in a couple of recording studios throughout your career. You may have seen one of those. It actually stemmed from a General Electric product, the BA9 Unilevel, the GE Unilevel. And of course, General Electric invented the 6386 tube and then invented the Unilevel, and everybody copied in some fashion or form the Unilevel. And the Collins is almost a direct steal if you look at the two schematics. Other than that, Collins used a voltage doubler in the power supply rather than a 5Y3. And then Gates more or less stole the concept of the circuit and added a 12AT7 for the stay level. All pretty much the same. And then RCA came up with their version, which was a plug-in module and printed circuit board, etc., etc. And I don't have one of those, and at this point, don't really want to spend the money to get one. Anyway, so there's my ramble and stuff. But rather than having everybody have to endure the RF feedback, which happened when I stopped talking like this, you would have had feedback get dragged up. I went back to the the good old homebrew solid state mic preamp and so forth. Sorry for the ramble. I'm not awake yet. All right, I'm never really awake. Jamie can attest to that. And before Paul ends up leaving, because he always ends up, even though Paul is retired, he always has a welding job to go and inspect. It's almost like he's got a full-time job, but I think he does it only 3 or 4 days a week now. Oh, I'm interested real quick too, Paul, in hearing about the what did you call the festival and when is it? So my kid is, and a couple of his friends are into that whole thing, the Renaissance Festival that's up in Sterling, New York, and they just went to somewhere near Yonkers, New York, like last weekend to see a similar show. So what do you call it, the Medieval Festival? I don't know if that'd be something that they want to go to, but I want to hear about it just so I can make mention. And is it pretty much the whole town of Lake George or a specific venue in Lake George? Paul, what is your call letters? Oh, KC2. CKO. It's a very confused and dyslexic K2XAM in the group.
Oh, okay. No, yes, the Medieval Festival is going to be in Lake George or off of, I think, Route 149 towards Whitehall or someplace or other. From the 5th through the 8th. You probably can look it up on the internet. But this weekend, I think Friday, Saturday, Sunday, is a town-wide garage sale in Warrensburg, New York. So that place gets inundated with hundreds, if not 1,000, vendors and stuff, and people from all over bring all their junk out and for sale and stuff, and you never know what you can find. So we roam around, and the traffic backs up for about a half a mile getting off at exit 23 there. So, but it's a nice time to be had, We always cruise around looking for something, and they have food vendors, and we get a sausage sandwich and a beer, and just have a good time. And I'm gonna drive the MG up, so we have a nice small vehicle, find nice parking, and just enjoy the last days of summer. And at that, yes, I have to take off. I have to go to Schenectady, to Altamont Avenue, and do an inspection on a new key bank they're putting up, or a Morgan Chase. I forget which bank it is. I inspected all the steel during fabrication in the shop, and now I have to go see how they've put everything together on the site. So, at that, gentlemen, have a great day, and if your son and you decide to come up to the Medieval Festival, look me up. We'll have you up to camp. Over.
All right, well, it won't be me because I'm not into that sort of thing. And 149 runs between Lake George and Fort Anne, which is probably 6 or 7 miles to the south of Whitehall. Ask me how I know, because I spent 7 grueling years, driving from Burnt Hills and or Ballston Spa, depending on which apartment I was living in, going to Rutland, Vermont 3 days a week, up the Northway, off the Lake George exit, over 149, up to Blackhall, as I referred to it, and picked up Route 4 to go to Vegas, or Rutland as everybody else knows it. And Rutland, the staff and myself, we invented several different names in our best Timtronisms. One of the sales girls referred to it as Ratland, and then it ended up transitioning into Rat Vegas, and then we just ended up calling it Vegas for short to make it sound better than it really was. But Fort Anne is the little town you're thinking of. Now that I've confused everybody, and poor Gordon has fallen out of his chair onto the floor laughing. And we were supposed to be really boring and try to be quiet and boring, like we were in a funeral home. and I'm sorry for your loss. Gordon, go ahead and pick it up. Save me from my own insanity. W2GOR. It's K2XAM in the group.
All right, very good. Wait a minute, I thought this was a funeral home. It's not?
We're trying to keep it a little more upbeat.
Roger.
Lively.
Say again, please.
No, I said lively, trying to keep it a little more lively.
Exactly. Where did that saying come, Roger that? I hear people say Roger that. Cracks it, Roger that. Anyway, so now it's okay. I've been relaxing here, listening with my feet up until I was called by Kevin. So, and Paul, CKO, I hope you're well, buddy. Good to hear you in there up in Gansevoort. I don't know why when I hear Gansevoort, I want to change my accent. But that was the wrong accent, I think, anyway. I've been doing some goofy things here. I put 3 cables under my antenna that are 140 feet long on the grass, and it seems to have helped my signal. I know that sounds crazy, but it's acting like a reflector of sorts. But not the kind that's like, that you make that's 5%, bigger than the antenna and 10 feet off the ground, so you have a cloud burner. This is like, I don't know, conductivity or something, but it did help the signal in general. And that's the story here. I'm the boring one. So, and VJB, Paul, you sound like NBC over here. Love the sound of that. And Kevin sounds like more like an FM rock station like WNEW, Scott Muni here in New York. This is WNEW, and that was Pink Floyd. So let me see. Let me turn it over to KC2CKO, home of the dyslexic call sign. Well, not for me, but actually I think I might have a little bit of that. When I used to see the letter B, a small b or a small d, I would get confused as a kid. So I wonder if I have, Kevin, would that mean I have a little bit of that?
I don't know. I think I've got it. Do you ever write letters backwards or out of order? So what I have to be very careful of is I take all of the credit cards when people do credit card orders at the shop, and I always read it back to them. I get the credit card number, the expiration date, and the super secret 3-digit code, or if you have an Amex, the super secret 4-digit code. And I jot all of that stuff down, and then I read it all back to them very slowly to make sure I didn't mess something up. So you might have a hint of it. Look, we all got something. If you go and see the so-called experts, they're going to pin something on us. Every one of us. It doesn't matter who you are, young or old, etc., etc. Anyway, up to Paul if he's still here and hasn't bailed out to go to Altamont Avenue. I don't even remember the last time I was on Altamont Avenue, but I was there quite a few years ago.
So, Paul, KC2CKO, he's going to take it?
You threw it in his direction, but maybe he's already, Elvis may have left the building already.
How is my signal up there, Kevin? Just real quick, is it just as it usually is, pretty much relative to everybody?
You're running well over 20 over. However, I'm listening to you on K3FEF because I'm able to hear everybody, particularly Paul from Gansevoort, who I can't really hear on the ICOM. And I'll make a comment to your putting the wire out. So one thing I noticed, Jamie almost had me roped into getting on 630 meters and inventing a T antenna out of my somewhat inverted V and all of that. So I had bought, I think, 4 sections of this galvanized fencing. It was about 50 feet long and it's 3 to 4 feet wide that you buy at the homeless depot where you can wreck it, we can help. And I strewn that out on the lawn And we did that like the day before it snowed or hours before it snowed or something, me and my son in a December a couple years ago. And I never really did get on 630 meters. But the first thing I noticed was that it brought my noise floor down. You know, at least an S unit, maybe 2 S units here. It brought down. So I don't know if you've noticed that, and I don't know that it ever really had any effect on my signal, but I never really correlated the two either. So that might be kind of interesting. You know, if that ends up improving the signal, I may end up going back to the Homeless Depot and getting some more, you know, of this. And it's been probably 2 years since we did that. My kid hates it because it's curled on the edges, and he mows the lawn, so he has to be very careful of all of it. So you can kind of see where it's curled up in the lawn and so forth. One of my neighbors complained that my house looks like too much of a junkyard, and I'm like, what? All the junk is in the house. The outside looks fairly reasonable, you know, and all of that sort of stuff. So I'm not really sure. I mean, we're not exactly golf course, you know, type community. We're not a gated community here by any stretch of the imagination. Everybody's house was built in the 1950s, and none of them are pristine. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, there's another dyslexic thought. So I'm not sure if the wire, Jamie, if he can pull himself away from his cup of coffee, his instant coffee, and maybe away from the low-pass filter project, and come over. Maybe he can shed some light, but I'll turn it back to you. Jamie is maybe getting up and scurrying like a lost mouse to the other side of the room to where the ham unit is set up. So back to you, Gordon. W2GOR K2XAM in the group.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, Kevin. I missed the question. I just detected my name being mentioned and scurried over here, like you said.
Oh, so Gordon has indicated that he's put out a piece of wire down along the ground and is getting the feeling that that is improving his signal, and I never correlated the two, like when I put that ground screen down. Here, I just noticed that my noise floor got quieter. So, have I inadvertently improved my signal at all by putting that ground screen down, or Gordon by putting the wire down underneath the antenna? What are your thoughts on that? You've had quite a bit of experience with building ants and so forth.
By the way, it's
you know, maybe I can't give a real definitive answer for that. You know, Gordon, I did hear you mention something about a cloud burner, and I guess you know, I could see the possibility of reduced ground losses. You know, now in the reflection, right, as with the ground being the reflector, I could see that possibility. You know, to what value I couldn't assign a number to it. And you know, kind of the same for you, Kev. You know, at the high angle, yeah, basically as kind of a reflector. You know, your normal ground gain type situation. I could see where you've reduced the losses that would be incurred, so you'd get some increase in ground gain up, you know, straight up at the zenith. Other than that, yeah, I couldn't put a number on it, Gordon. You'd probably be in a better position to know even than I. I personally, I've never done that. I've never, you know, put a reflecting screen under a horizontal antenna. You know, Steve, WA1QIX also says the same thing you said, Kevin, was that when he put a ground system underneath his, I think he has like a 160-meter dipole fed with open wire line or something, and he says he found a reduction in noise too. Or me, on the other hand, I have that, you know, 75-foot vertical with, you know, a big ground screen and ground radio system. Oh my God, that thing is such a noise bucket. It's really hot. It's a hot antenna, but yeah, I use the beverage on receivers, so I you know, it's for me, it was exactly the opposite. Everything kind of came up, including the noise with the more radials, and well, once I got to a certain point, it didn't. But I remember that transfer over, to having starting with just that ground screen that I laid down, and that vertical really came alive. Especially, of course, down at 474 kilohertz and below. So, yeah, I wish I had a better answer. My gut feel is, yeah, sure, it's some little improvement because you've reduced the ground losses on that reflector, that is the ground, but, as to what number, I couldn't tell you. W2GOR N2VJ.
N2VJ, W2GOR, great to hear you, too. And, yeah, I noticed it. I put 3 wires, actually, and I randomize it a little bit so that it wouldn't act like a reflector straight up, because I figure it would be more like the Earth, but I know the Earth is really spread out and it's not one close to resonance thing, I understand. But these are like 10%, 15% longer than the dipole, and there are 3 of them at little angles and stuff. And I do notice a noise reduction, but it could be the band. The band also got quieter the last few days, so it's really hard to tell. I have to hire 7 guys out there with walkie-talkies to say, ready, go, run. Anyway, so very good. And, I was going to ask you one quick question before I just listen and kind of sign, but listen. And that is, sorry. Are you familiar with the Hercules AM broadcast transmitters from that guy in Greece?
Were you asking me or Kev?
You.
I know that. No, I don't. I guess I know there's a Greek company that's making good AM broadcast transmitters, but I'm personally not familiar with it. Over.
Okay. W2GOR here. Well, it's a 4,000 watts carrier, Class D, beautiful quality build, beautiful audio quality, and it's like a 3U rack, and it modulates up to 16,000 watts. It's pretty unbelievable. 2 big heat sinks on the side and 2 on the back, but I just couldn't believe that somebody could fit a transmitter like that in just a few rack spaces.
I've continually been impressed by companies like RVR and some of these European companies. We as Americans, I feel like we've really slacked off in the technology department and developmental, and we're resting on our, American laurels. Because in my opinion, I'm seeing a lot of those European companies, like even there was a Czech shortwave company, I forgot the name of it. I was very impressed. They had a 10 kilowatt transmitter that was probably in the size of, like a 5-foot rack, regular 19-inch rack, and the thing was fantastic. And I asked the engineers at the voice of the broad masses of Eritrea, and he says, we have never had any problems with it, and this thing survives. We have horrible lightning storms here, and it just kind of chugs along. So, yeah, I think we really need to step up our game, and that's me included here as a transmitter manufacturer, because we are very rapidly being outclassed by a lot of these so-called not third world countries. They'd be a first world country, but just by a lot of these countries that we kind of look down upon now, Gordon. W2GOR and N2VJ.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, resting on our laurels is totally what's happening. Yeah, getting a little too confident. Yeah, we gotta stay. But it's hard to keep up with those competitive costs of labor and stuff that those people are doing. I think we need our country to invest back into our people. Hey, real quick before I turn it over to the other guys, can you give me a quick audio report? This is just, I removed the Innovonics and everything just for fun here. I'm just using a mic and a preamp and a little built-in compressor, and that's it, with a little EQ.
Yeah, I had the noise blanker on at first, and I was getting a little peak distortion. Give me a little bit more modulate, or not, like more talk. Talk some more to me.
Yeah, I have to hook up the de-esser, so the S's are a little bit funky here, but and I'm also running 150% modulation, which might be a little much. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, just a Focusrite Class A mic pre.
Yeah, well, you've got morning voice, so that's adding a little, difficulty in analyzing it. You're EQ'd beautifully. Your morning voice is kind of putting a little bit of grunge in there that could be confused for some peak distortion if somebody wasn't aware of it, right? I mean, yeah, I guess you could benefit from a de-esser, but I'm not hearing any tearing on your S's or anything like that. I wouldn't make it real wet. I would just, clamp it real hard. You're not tearing out on the S's, so you really sound good and you're full-bodied, but you might be pushing it at 150%, and that might be some of what I'm hearing too, is my detector is, starting to struggle now demodulating you. W2GOR, this is N2VJ.
Okay, I'm going to back it down a little bit. So now we're down to 120, and with 90% negative peaks. Is that better?
Yes. So it wasn't just your morning voice. There was, some weirdness comes on, right? You start looking at the waveform of your voice, and you got a much deeper voice than I do, and you look at that peak, that individual vibration of the vocal cords, especially with you, right now having that little bit of morning voice, and that little bit of peak can make these weird sort of transients take place, those individual peaks at I don't know, maybe 80 cycles, 90 cycles, which I think you might be averaging around, your voice kind of center frequency. So you sound real good, like crazy kind of good. You're up to Paul, WA3VJB territory as far as tonal quality, vocal quality, and clearly you know how to work a microphone as well. So I'm hearing all of that. Over.
Wow. You've reached VJB territory. I love it. If I sound anything like him, yeah. I was just trying to get the peaks back because I have the Optimod and the Inovonics, and I couldn't quite get it to get that punch, but you can't have everything, those things are set up for more like continual loudness and intelligibility and stuff like that. So anyway, thank you. The only problem is the Inovonics has a nice low-pass filter. I don't have any, so if I open this thing up, my low-pass filter on the audio, it's going to be pretty nasty up there. So there you go. So now I'm just, so you can see this is a low-pass filter. So I'm just sort of dialing it in around 5.5 or something like that. Over.
Okay, yeah, you did tear that time when you were, going. You tore out on that time. So, but I mean, on your normal speech circumstances, your normal sibilance, it's no problem whatsoever, Gordon. And gosh, we're kind of hogging it on the other guys, and I got to get back to the other bench. But yeah, you have Kevin and I were commenting about this. You have an exemplary signal in all aspects. W2GOR and N2VJ.
Whoa, GOR will not be able to get out of the doorway with his head now. Okay, we've been hogging it up, so let me throw it up in the air. Whoever wants to take it, thank you very much for your patience. W2 Good Old Radio, the Hog Station. Sorry, guys. Okay, well, if nobody wants to take it, I'll take it. Just kidding. Kevin, you still there?
I am still here. I thought maybe Paul VJB would up, but maybe he has left the building. Who knows? Moment, and I'm not sure what this intelligibility is that you guys are talking about, because I have none. I'm just here, and I don't even know what I'm saying most of the time. It's I'm just saying, hey, and now another 10 in a row, and stuff like that on your hit music station. It's 44 degrees and sunny here, and sorry excuse, junk like that. you know, rip and read off the news wire and all of that sort of stuff. So I'm not sure if Paul is still here. So Paul, are you still here, or have you gotten your day started, and or you know, maybe gotten your day started? VJB, it's K2XAM in the group.
Oh yeah, just been listening and being compared. Thank you for that, Jamie. K2XAM in the group, WA3VJB. Yeah, Kevin, I wanted to point out something that may help your son cut the grass. We get these little metal spines that you use to hold the insulation up in the rafters of your ceiling. Bend them into a U and push them down onto the ground wire that you've got. It does two things. It lets the grass grow up higher than the lawn mower, you know, into its range where it's going to cut, and it holds the wire down to the ground so that it doesn't get caught up in the blade of the mower. And I use this strategy on K3 RTV, K3 silicone seal, which is the museum station not far from here. When we had the Collins 300G on the air, had one of those traffic highway information service center-loaded verticals out in the yard. I have that here now, as a matter of fact, that antenna. It might get on 160 this winter. But the ground radials that we had to put down needed to be out of the City of Bowie municipal lawnmower. And that was the trick we used to get the grass to grow up higher than the wire and keep it out of the way of the blades. And you know, Gordon's always got a good signal into here, so I don't know whether the wire, I mean, I haven't been on 80 in a while, 75 meters since about April or May, any kind of repetitive nature to do a comparison. Yeah. So if it cuts your noise, that's a good thing. And if it boosts your signal even a little bit, sure, it's not going to hurt the signal for the most part. I mean, I can't imagine the takeoff angle being changed or enhanced so much that it reduces some kind of pattern to somewhere else. And we're close enough that the high angle of radiation is probably a good thing. If you're going to try to work out to California or work the UK, then that's different. So those are my thoughts on both the logistics and the RF nature of a wire on the ground. But yeah, as the sun gets higher in the sky, although I can't see it today, it's overcast here. I probably should take the opportunity to sign, and good to take part in the festivities this morning on 3705, what I call the Kevin and Jamie Club. And it's good to hear everybody on. So here comes Gordon, and nice to hear you on too. W2GOR in the group, WA3VJB.
Okay, my friend, great to hear you too. And by the way, what is your receiver that you're using there, Paul?
The R390A this morning with the diode output feeding a little bridging amp.
Okay, so diode output, those little screws on the back. I used to have a couple of R390As, and that's the way to get the direct audio thing, right?
Yes, it's much better quality than the built-in line or local out. But I should point out, I also noticed some carrier starvation when you had it up past about 120 was clean, 150 was not, and that's a function of the type of diode that I guess most of us use if we're running a vintage receiver of some kind. That's why I've never been much of a proponent of asymmetrical audio. It's like it doesn't sound good at the other end.
Oh, okay, yeah. You're saying you like it like phase rotated and fixed up?
No, just balanced. 120 is fine. Densely packed at 100%, 90%, 95% negative. That's a good thing. If you want to achieve loudness, don't do it with asymmetrical modulation for those of us who are running old-style diode detectors.
Got it. Yeah, right. Well, this is just the asymmetry of my voice, because I took the Inovonics out of the circuit there. And yeah, well, I have some kind of problem with my rig, because the E-rig sometimes, I mean, unless it's the modulation monitor, I don't think it is, but I do get 30% swings randomly on the audio level. So I'm not sure if I don't think it's the mod monitor. I think there's something going on in the transmitter. So, yeah, this should be okay now. This is about 125, so hopefully that's good. Yeah, I don't think you gain that much. Maybe there's this loudness wars thing that the radio stations are going through that we also went through, still are going through in the music business. When I do audio mastering, I get a lot of this. Can you make it as loud as the last thing? And they destroy all their peaks, and I end up mastering things at an RMS of -6, which is horrifying. You know, it's like 6 dB of dynamic range. So, anyway. All right, now let me see if Paul is still there. KC2CKO, didn't mean to take over here. W2GOR.
Yeah, I think he left the building a while ago to do his welding inspection. Yeah, we were talking about the band Boston and how they achieved their mix in the analog world. Very squash dynamic range and very loud. But I think the AM broadcast world, when it comes to the loudness wars, now relies on compression and the algorithms that are most effective rather than asymmetry, because I think by regulation they're limited to 125% anyway. So even if a MOSFET-based transmitter could do better than that, they're not allowed to. And mod monitors are only supposed to measure up to 133% on peaks anyway. So it's not like there's a lot in it for asymmetrical modulation, even if they were to try, because they're capped at 1 1/4. So they use the lower level audio compression schemes to obtain loudness, in some cases very effectively. Now, I've got a little trouble with my PTT here. I push the button and nothing happens. Here we go.
I noticed that before. You sounded like you were lingering there. Okay, very good. Anybody else left with us?
I'm left, but I'm leaving. I'm planning on leaving anyway. And back in the 70s, I think Harris came out with the MW1 transmitter, and it was a solid-state transmitter. I don't know that it was the first solid-state transmitter, because I think Collins had also attempted, but kind of failed at making a solid-state AM transmitter. But I think they made a 5 or a 50 kilowatt that just, they made 1 or 2 of them and they crashed and burned, but that's a different story and I don't have all the details. But the MW1 became a popular AM transmitter, and for a while, and I'm not sure what a while is, whether it was a year or 2 or what, some AM stations that had these new solid state in the mid-70s, transmitters were running 300% positive peaks, and the reason that the FCC came out with the rule of 125% positive was anybody in the market that didn't have a new solid-state transmitter, which was, let's face it, everybody, because nobody ran out and bought a new transmitter just because you could. Not in the smaller markets, not at the smaller stations at the kilowatt level. And so they strong-armed the FCC and said, look it, these guys are going further, they're louder, and on, and we can't be competitive with our, typical plate-modulated AM transmitter. And so they more than likely strong-armed the NAB, and the NAB then ended up strong-arming the FCC to put the limit of 125% positive peaks. Many of my stations that ran back in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, when I was doing contract engineering, if somebody was running a good oldies format or classic country format, I limited the positive peaks down to about 110 to 115%, because I could start hearing the distortion, and it's like, well, why ruin the good oldies or the classic country? Now with today's music, it's like, run it at 1,000,000% positive peaks. It's all distortion anyway. If you listen to today's top 40 music, to me, it's just all a bunch of noise to begin with. Sorry, Gordon. I know you probably have ended up having to produce some of this stuff. It's just, just Kevin's personal opinion and how he set up his radio stations and stuff like that. And there were a few stations that, due to transmitter site issues, transmitter issues, tower issues, there were some sites that I ended up running at 80% symmetrical modulation. If it kept the audio clean, and particularly up in Rutland, we were the only AM station in Rutland, and we were the only AM station for miles, and it was a 5 kilowatt AM. The 5 kilowatt AM with the 250 watt signal due to the poor ground conductivity, but I ran that one at 80% symmetrical because we were playing oldies for a majority of the day and some talk, and but the RF was getting into the FM, and no amount of moving grounding around and shuffling things around could completely cure the RF. Like, you get one of those days where it just rained and rained and rained, the RF would be in the mic on the FM, and I got that tamed down pretty well. But just to ensure it from being minimalized, I ran 80% symmetrical modulation at that station, and we were playing oldies, and it sounded very good, and we had no competitors in the market. And then there was another station outside of Utica in Little Falls that the owner of the station just did not want to buy tubes, every year, and so I ran that one at 80% symmetrical, and they were doing a classic country format. And with rotating a 4400, there were 4 of them in a CCA transmitter around one, clockwise direction once a month around, was able to make a set of tubes in that transmitter last 2 years by not beating the daylights out of it. And so, a couple of my learned tricks, but at one point in the 70s, for a period of time, 300% positive peaks. So with that, I will sign out and head on down to the shop and see what Jamie is up to with super secret projects. I think it goes back to Paul. So 7-3 guys, back to Paul. Great chatting with everybody, and I hope neither of you really mind putting up with my pretty poor quality sounding audio and my raspy voice and all of that sort of stuff. So thanks for putting up with me, and back to WA3VJB K2XAM, signing from the group.
I like the term that Jamie came up with there about morning voice. It's got that phlegmatic edge to it. It can sound like peak distortion, but it's physiological. Well, I hope that suggestion about the little bent wire things may help your son in the grass cutting, Kevin, by the way. And don't let that slip by you, because I found it very effective on that the ground plane for the vertical that we had on 160. Well, I'd be surprised if that were the reason why the FCC limited asymmetry. I think the other part of your point is that it started sounding bad once some sort of quality and practices standard that the FCC wished to maintain. The number of listeners on old-style diode detector receivers in cars at the time was a significant factor. And even if those stations with the shiny new solid-state transmitters could run 300%, it's the same problem that people here generate when they run asymmetrical modulation past a certain point. People who are listening are not listening on the type of detector that can take advantage of it. And I couldn't help but think that as a regulatory agency, at least in the old days, they watched out somewhat for the consumer, or maybe the NAB said, this is going to destroy listenership on the basis not of competitiveness, but of technical quality as received. But for whatever reason, I remember when the old modulation monitors started going obsolete, because I picked up one of them. Those old gates that would only measure to 110% positive, and it didn't meet the type accepted standard anymore. And Kevin, you mentioned Utica and 80% modulation. That reminds me of WUTQ. Right there by the railroad tracks, they had a Bauer 707. With very tired 4400s in it. we'd gone up there to rescue a BT-20A, one of the GE transmitters, quarter kilowatt job. They no longer wanted. And I looked at the line monitor. It's like, man, this is running pretty soft. And there was a little rack mount pot marked master control. So when the guy wasn't looking, I nudged it up a little bit to try to, get it louder, and it was up all the way. So they apparently were doing the tube rotation thing as well, and it was near the end of the service life. So anyway, signals are starting to fall here. I'm going to kick it over to Gordon for any concluding remarks. Heard somebody else key up underneath me there, so maybe that station will break in again. I missed the call over. I got to work on my PTT here too. I've got one of these little wireless fobs that you use to turn on the ceiling fan. It keys the TR circuitry in the other room. I'm on the little BN2A mixer here today with the 441. And the transmitter's all in the other room. And apparently maybe it's just got a dead battery or something. That could be it. Anyway, good to visit with everyone this morning. Maybe I'll be in here a little more often as the fall radio season begins, the post-summer static season. And good to hear everyone on. W2GOR. Catch you later, WA3VJB Annapolis.
Yeah, I hear Rare DX in there. Good morning, Gordon.
Yes, good morning. All right, well, I got to leave. I got to get some sleep. I didn't sleep yet last night. Wasn't feeling too well, so Christine's going to take me to the doctor in a few hours. I better get at least 2 hours sleep, so good night. Or good morning. And, Kevin, if you're still there, thanks for those stories. I love those broadcast stories. They're great. And always love hearing that. And interesting about the percentage of modulation and all that stuff, too. And, Paul, if you're still there or in listening mode, great to hear you. Hope we didn't leave you out. And Bear73, I've got to run and get a little bit of sleep. W2GOR. Have a great day, everybody.
Feel better.
Yeah, I hope you feel better.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
All right, well, I just wanted to say hi and say hi to Paul, the Rare DX. Sounded good until the band started going south. This is WB2GCR in Smart Buddy.
WB2H.
Hey, Bear. I have a little bit of signal left, enough to say good morning to you, and hope you also are doing well there from Greater Albany. But yeah, it's going out fast. The tide is falling. WB2GCR, take care. WB2VJB, out of here for now.
Okay, 73, take care, and have a good day. WB2G.